have to be controlled when you rush him, though. And here is a handoff from Marshawn Lloyd, the South Carolina transfer. He broke free, and he scores. He got by Richie for 6. Yeah, 7's not going to do it tonight at the Coliseum.
It was a decision by me and my team, my family, and it comes down to that. I'd say the player and person that they be getting, a person that cares for his teammates. Some of y'all may have seen, some of y'all may have not. I try to take care of all my guys.
Welcome to the Put On Waivers Media Group, home of the Put On Raiders podcast and the Student Body Right podcast. This is your place for the best breakdowns and the best insight for those who fight on and bleed silver and black. Now, here are your hosts, Dwayne Douglas and Ryan Holmes.
And welcome everybody to the glorious episode of the Student Body Rights USC podcast. I'm your host, Dwayne Douglas, and as always, I am podcasting off the beautiful shores of the Pacific Ocean. Beautiful day out here in Southern California. Finally, beautiful day out here in Southern California. PORSBR is my Twitter handle. Right below me, go ahead and click, rate, review, and subscribe, leave a comment, leave some questions, if you will, for us so we can talk about those in the future. We have a special guest on the show today, Connor Morrissette, USA Football, USC Football.com, not USA, the USC Football, 24/7, all that good stuff. He is, love this stuff. I read every week. So thank you for joining us here on the podcast. How's everything going for you today, Connor?
Going really well, Dwayne. Thank you for having me. I appreciate being here.
So can you tell, because we have some breaking news today, right? So can we talk about Anthony Jones here? What can you tell the USC fans about this gentleman?
Yeah, I mean, based on his track record, it seems like a great hire. So just to fill everyone in, Anthony Jones was at TCU as the running backs coach there for the last 2 years, and Memphis, I think 4 years before that, and he's produced a lot of NFL running backs, and USC is expected to hire him. It's not official yet, but I think it just needs to be announced by USC at this point. So almost official. He's going to replace Kyle McDonald, who was the assistant running backs coach the last couple of years, who took a job with the Chargers. And yeah, just some of the names that this guy has coached. I mean, it's a really impressive list. Every season it seems like he's had someone. So he had Kenneth Gainwell at Memphis, I believe, and then Antonio Gibson, Darrell Henderson, Tony Pollard. So 4 pretty prominent NFL running backs. If you play fantasy football, I'm sure you've had at least one of those guys on your team at some point. And then last year, he coached Amani Bailey, who is going to be an NFL prospect. And then the year before, when TCU went to the national championship, he coached Kendre Miller, who's in the NFL, and Amari DiMercato, who, again, if you're a fantasy football player, he was like a deep waiver stash guy last year. I remember I had him on my team for a week. So yeah, the track record's really good. He was a high school coach for 10 years before going to Memphis. And I mean, all you can judge at this point is a track record, and it looks really good for Anthony Jones. So I'm excited about it, and I think he'll be able to get the most out of the USC running backs.
I think all the backs you mentioned have one thing in common that I love is their versatility. So they can run the football, tote the rock when they need to, and then if you have throw them on the backfield, they can do that too as well. We know Lincoln Riley likes to get everybody involved offensively. So I watched this channel is USC Football. We have a quarterback show too that we kind of break down, and we also do the Raiders as well. So I'm looking at the combine this weekend, and I'm seeing some of the names: Solomon Byrd, CRW, Brendan Rice, Taj Washington, and of course Caleb Williams. It just makes me sad of thinking about what could have been in 2023. It really did, because it feels like if they were just decent on one side of the ball, particularly the defense, they really could have done some really did some big things despite having to play Washington and Oregon. In summation of that season, like what do you think some of the biggest lesson that Lincoln Riley learned from 2023?
Well, I think defensively you have to start there, and I think it's obvious the mistake or the decision to retain Alex Grinch was ultimately a mistake, and that defensive staff that Riley had so much confidence in ultimately burned him. And Riley was a part of it too. It's not just like
Yeah.
he's offense only and the defense is someone else's responsibility. He's the head coach, so that falls on his shoulders too. So I think that was probably the biggest lesson, that he needed to get some better defensive coaches in the building. And it looks like he's done that so far. Of course, we'll need to see what happens in the future and just to evaluate how well these guys do. But I'm excited about Eric Henderson, the new defensive line coach at USC. It seems like he's doing a nice job on the recruiting trail, and he has a great track record from the Rams. And it just seems like a lot of these new coaches, it almost is like, how can it not work? But I've asked that question before and, and been burned. I thought USC was going to be really good last season. So I start there. I wonder too if I think the offensive line was a way bigger problem than I anticipated and other people anticipated.
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
that ended up really hurting USC. So they tried to build it through the transfer portal. And that's something I don't really fault them on at all, because Clay Helton just had not done a good job recruiting the offensive line up until like they'd run out of bodies pretty much. So the first year, Clay Helton did recruit a lot of those guys, and they were a good group, and USC had a lot of success. But then, because Helton hadn't done a nice job in the classes after that group, USC just was really bare there. And I mean, Justin Dietich was back and Jonah Monheim, but then you had to replace 3 other spots, and it just didn't look right. So I think that was another lesson. But that's something that I don't really fault Riley for as much as the defensive things. He could have made defensive changes. On the offensive line, I kind of feel like his hand was forced. They tried their best, it didn't work. Sometimes that happens in college football, and it's tough to blame a guy too much because he inherited that.
Yeah, no question about it. I think one thing I learned, and I would think he has too. I think you build through recruiting on the offensive line, and you can pick some pieces in the transfer portal, but the offensive line, those 5 guys have to be like in sync, work in concert together. And I think that's what I think that's what we gotta kind of look for in the future. I also forgot Kalen Bullock. I don't want to Kalen Bullock. I know if I forget Kalen Bullock, USC fans are gonna fill up my mentions here. As far as he goes to the NFL Combine as well. Let's see here. So let's talk a little NIL. So I'm a San Francisco Giant fan. I absolutely hate my GM because he penny pinches like he's a GM in Pittsburgh. So it drives me crazy. I feel like that's what I feel like how I feel with USC NIL. It just feels like like the Giants are not realizing that the GM doesn't realize that they're in the 5th market in the country. You have this is LA, this is Southern California, the 2nd market. Like, once that ruling came down for Tennessee, I mean, I just feel like it's just time to do something here with NIL. I know you speak about it a lot because it's something that interests you. What are your thoughts about their what they're doing? Because I understand they don't want to get hand in the cookie jar, but like the cookies are being given away now, so there's no reason for that now.
Yeah, I don't think USC, I wouldn't describe it as penny pinching, because I think that when they do get a recruit on campus or a recruit to sign and they enroll and they're on campus and ready to play, those guys are well paid in comparison to a lot of other programs. I think USC has a top 10 to 15 NIL setup nationally, which is really good, but I think it's pretty significantly far away from a top 5 to 7 NIL setup. And I think that's sort of where the disconnect is with the school and with the fans. And yeah, I talked to someone today and they said since that ruling came down in Tennessee, USC is still sort of plotting its future, and they were caught off guard by that a little bit. They didn't expect that ruling to come and affect what they were going to do so soon. They were thinking maybe more in the summer stuff would come down the pike. So I think the biggest thing that I've been told is because of Reggie Bush and because of a lot of scandals that have happened at USC, people in power there are very risk averse, and they just do not want to get caught doing something wrong. And so they might even be risk averse to the point of it being a fault a little bit.
Yeah.
And hopefully now that there are no rules in USC, they're still plotting, like I said, hopefully next week or whenever they come out with this new NIL guidelines that they're going to follow. It's a little bit more aggressive. And I just think overall, like Ohio State and Texas, I compare USC to them a lot. And those schools have recruited really well. They interpreted the NIL rules much differently than USC did. And I think we can say that now with the ruling and just where things are going, that was probably a mistake on USC's part for as good as their intentions were. Those other schools were more aggressive and they landed better recruits. I think that's clear. The question now is USC going to learn from what they've done in the past? And then with these new rules, are they going to allow themselves to really go out there and be on the cutting edge of this? Because who's going to stop them? I don't think anyone is. So that would be my hope for USC in the future. And I think it's a Lincoln Riley decision. It's a Carol Folt decision. It's a Jen Cohen decision. If they're on the same page with being more aggressive, I think that's really going to help USC because, as you said, cookies are being given away right now. There's no reason for them not to be on that same page. So I hope they change, but as time goes on, we need to see what's going to happen.
No question about it. The move to the Big Ten is here now. The biggest, one of the biggest things that you think are a positive for USC, and then what do you think? What do you think they have to be wary of going into that new conference?
Well, I think the biggest positive is their recruiting footprint should get a little bit bigger, and they should be able to do better recruiting kids in Big Ten country maybe than they did in the past. They had some success in 2024, but maybe with some bigger name guys. I think that's big. We've already seen Matt Entz really make a lot of that area his own because he came from North Dakota State and he was recruiting that footprint before, and it looks like he's going to be recruiting there again. And just overall, whether it's recruiting, whether it's just football in general, being in one of the two big conferences is significant, of course. So I think that helps recruiting, that helps NIL with money, that just helps with eyeballs, that helps with everything. Right now, you want to be in one of those two big conferences, and so that's huge for USC. I look at the travel as being a potential negative. I might sound like a broken record. I bring that up a lot, but a road game at Maryland is a little bit different than a road game just going up to even Oregon or some of the Bay Area schools. It's just longer, but I think USC will be up for it. And the way it's been explained to me from Jen Cohen and from Riley and others, they don't look at it as a big negative at all. So to me, I think it might be challenging, but these guys are pretty much already professionals and they're treated as professionals, and the travel, I don't think it'll affect them too much, but it's certainly going to be a change. And that's going to be something I'll be looking for, especially in that road Maryland game where that's a long trip and they just haven't had many of those in the past.
Yeah. I mean, can you talk about like just this conference doesn't seem to have, besides Ohio State and Michigan, like high level quarterback play. Even Penn State, like they still kind of like they have a good team all around, but like their quarterback play is, when it was time to go beat Ohio State or Michigan, that could be something where like, and I'll get into defensive coaching staff, that could be something where like, if we can just slow down the running game of these teams, the strength of this USC defense looks like it's in the secondary. So it could be, opportunity for some interceptions with some quarterbacks who are not top level.
Well, that's how I see it. I think it's fascinating because the Big Ten, we did the little schedule breakdown on our show 2 weeks ago. You're absolutely right. There's a world where Miller Moss is the best quarterback in the conference next season, which is crazy to say because he'll be a first-year starter, and the Big Ten has so many historic programs, but so many of those coaches are defense first, and it's just been a defense first conference for a few years now. And if you play really well on offense, you're Ohio State or you're Michigan. There's no like fun air raid, spread it out, who knows what the hell is going to happen team in the Big Ten right now. And I think if you're a big optimist for USC, the hope is the defenses are better in this new conference, but our offense is going to be a lot better than pretty much every other opposing offense outside of Ohio State. So we can outscore a lot of these teams. It just is so different from, especially this last season in the Pac-12 where Bo Nix, it's Michael Penix, it's even the Cal quarterback threw it all over the yard against USC. And I feel like if the Cal quarterback was in the Big Ten, it'd be one of the better quarterbacks. So it's just a fascinating difference in play style, and I think that should help USC, but I need to see how well they play on defense.
Yeah.
First of all, but I mean, how many games did like Nebraska and Iowa and Wisconsin win where 13 points got it done for them? You play USC, that's not going to happen. They'll probably score more points than they do against some of these Big Ten defenses, USC's opponents. But I really believe they will be able to outscore a lot of these teams, and that'll give them a chance to win a lot of these games. It's going to be so interesting to watch because the defenses are so good, but the offenses just haven't been.
Haven't been. I'm gonna jump over to transfer portal right now, and like real quick about you mentioned Miller Moss. Is there a world where Miller Moss is the starter, but on some plays here and there, we see Jaden Mayava on the field? Because I feel like what you lose in Caleb, maybe sometimes the ball didn't get out on time. He ran around because he has such a great ability to do those things. But then there's games where you need a special play. And Miller Moss, is not he's not a stiff back there, but but he's not gonna move like Mayava can. So you think there's a possibility of both of those guys playing with obviously with Miller Moss probably maybe getting the majority of the snaps?
I wouldn't rule anything out, but if you just look at what Lincoln Riley's done historically, it's pretty much always been a one quarterback deal, and he shied away from splitting it up a little bit. And even Michigan last season with I think Alex Orji was his name, he would come in and run specific packages over JJ McCarthy, but Riley's never really done stuff like that, going back to Kyler Murray because he was such a great dual threat, and then Baker Mayfield was so talented, and he's just always had a guy who could do everything. And so I don't rule it out. But I think at this point, if we're talking in March, before spring practice starts, before fall camp starts, I would be a little bit surprised if it's not exclusively Moss. That can change, and maybe we'll take stuff away from post-practice media availability. And who knows, maybe even Maeda could win the job. I don't foresee that happening, but don't want to rule anything out right now. So just to answer your question, I'd be surprised, but I don't want to rule anything out because it's so early in the off season here.
Yeah. The outgoing guys, is there any guys who USC is gonna maybe miss? As far as the guys who left, maybe Damani. But as far as like all the guys who left the program, outgoing transfers.
Michael Jackson, I think
Yeah.
maybe he could help, because if you look at the wide receiver depth chart, it's the 4 super sophomores, and then it's kind of like, all right, Kyron Hudson's back, and you have some veteran guys, but I think another really reliable receiver would help them. And Jackson's had some injury history, but he, to me, is a guy, he might not get open as well as some other receivers, but if you throw him the ball over the middle, he's going to come down with it. I thought he did an excellent job catching contested catches last season. And you can tell how people think of a player when they leave to, with all due respect to Mario Williams, he goes to Tulane, and then you see Jackson go to Georgia. I think Georgia knows what they're getting, a really reliable offensive weapon who has the potential to take the top off the defense, but he's more of just a move the sticks guy. And I think USC, they have some of those guys, but they need to emerge. I could see Makai Lemon becoming a really tough move the sticks guy for him, but I feel like Jackson sort of already was doing that. And USC, they're always going to be good with Lincoln Riley at receiver. I don't think it's a big concern, but when you ask that question, he's sort of the first guy that jumps out to me.
Transfer portal, guys coming in. Who do you like as far as like the top guy? I know just did your show, but like about it. But who's the guy you like a couple guys, offense, defense you like the best, biggest impact?
The guy I like the best is Kamari Ramsey out of UCLA. I think first he's a safety, but I think that Danton Lynn came to UCLA last season, and before that, Ramsey was a redshirt and he hadn't played at all. And in that first year, he took what Danton Lynn taught him, ran with it, and locked down that starting free safety job. And I think he's an NFL talent in the future. This will be his 3rd year in college. There's a world where he could come back afterwards. But to me, I think he is a player who was really good last year, but has another level, who could take another step forward, who has a lot of potential. I love that he was with Lynn last season. So I think he comes in and he locks down one of USC's safety spots and will have a really big impact. I liked him in high school too, so I might be a little biased there, but by all accounts, he's a great kid, a hard worker, and his experience with Lynn and what he did last year, I think, will lend itself to success with USC. And then on offense, it's tough not to talk about Jaquavius Marks from Mississippi State. USC just has a glaring need at running back with Austin Jones and Marshawn Lloyd heading to the draft. So I look at Jaquavius Marks and I don't even know who's really going to challenge him, because USC, besides Marks, it's all sophomores and freshmen. So I think he'll come in, he'll maybe even be a little bit better than Marshawn Lloyd because he might get used more. You don't have an Austin Jones there to take carries away from him. Quentin Joyner is going to have a big offseason to take over that running back 2 spot. But Marks, I think, has a huge impact. And then I wouldn't be surprised if USC took another running back in the next transfer portal window, someone who could help them a little bit. It depends. It depends on how much they like these freshmen, because last year they had 5 scholarship running backs. You could argue that was too many. Darwin Barlow really didn't play much until the end of the season. Now they have 4. But if Marks goes down, then that's slim pickings behind him. So that'll be interesting to see what they do at the running back spot. It's kind of damned if you do, damned if you don't. It all depends what happens during the fall. But just having Marks as really your only experienced running back makes me a little nervous. So we'll see.
Yeah, see, the class, the class coming in. I know, it's it's 20th ranked. It's not where USC fans want it to be. Who are some of the guys to look out for? And this is also Walker Lyons is off his mission. He's coming back too as well, right? So, is there any pass catchers or any offensive line, defensive lines? Some of these guys who can impact the team in this year, or are we looking down the road?
Definitely some guys could impact the team this year. I think on the defensive line, you're trying to get all the help you can get.
Yeah.
And so Cameron Fountain as an edge rusher, can he come in and take reps away from an Anthony Lucas or a Braylon Shelby? Potentially. Those guys are also younger, and those guys were highly rated recruits. I think Fountain's going to have a clean slate, and playing time's up for grabs. Someone needs to replace Solomon Byrd, and Shelby might be that guy. But we saw Lucas sort of his snaps decreased a year ago. He's going to be in the competition. I think Cameron Fountain has, if he wows everyone in camp, he'll have a great opportunity to play a lot. And then on the offensive line, I think people get nervous starting in true freshmen on the offensive line, and I get it. Jason Zandamela, he's the #1 ranked interior offensive lineman. He wants to play center. Josh Henson recruited him to play center. He could play some guard, but he's a guy who, if he has a big camp, he's the #1 rated guy at his position. So why couldn't he come in, even if he is at a position that doesn't usually lend itself to early playing time? So I start with those 2 guys. I think Marcellus Williams could maybe feature at cornerback a little bit. That room is deep, though, so he'll need to really impress. Carlin Jones, another guy, the bigger defensive lineman who USC was going back and forth with Ohio State for his signature. He ultimately picks USC. I think that's probably where the Trojans are the weakest, in the middle of that defensive line. So he comes in. He won't be an early enrollee, though, so that might be held against him. So I look at those guys. The last position I'll bring up is tight end, because with Lake McCree tearing his ACL so late in the season last year.
Horrible.
Yeah, it felt so bad for him. They're starting pretty much over. So maybe could Walker Lyons emerge? Could Walter Matthews emerge? Could Joey Olson emerge? There's an opening there for someone to come in and take the reps. And there are just so many bodies with Carson Tabaracci there as well. And I just look at that position group. Someone has to take the reps, and tight end, I feel like, has been a little bit underutilized under Lincoln Riley. So what if someone comes in, wows everyone, has a great camp, and then all of a sudden you have this big time young tight end? That could be really exciting for the fan base. And I think there are a lot of potential guys who could fit into that role. And Walter Matthews is the highest rated of the bunch at 6'7", 245 pounds. I'm really excited about him. So I think there's an opening at tight end too, and we'll see what happens there.
A couple more here with Connor Morrissette, USCfootball.com. The defensive coaching staff. I just did on this show, we break down a lot of coaches film. I just did the UCLA game versus Cal. And it is interesting defense because there are times where I'm watching the defense and there's one down lineman. I'm like, oh, this is easy. They can just hand the ball off to Calisto running back. They hand it off to him. It's gonna be a 7-yard gain. They stick him at the line of scrimmage. Like, you know what I mean? They do some really interesting things. I know it's that Ravens Michigan defense that everybody's looking forward to having on their team. What is your thought process looking at this defense, looking at the coaches they brought in, because they did bring in some heavy hitters. I mean, as far as this goes, they're not really messing around with its coaching staff.
The down lineman always stuck out to me as well. You watch the NFL and guys are standing up all over the place, and in college you just don't see it as much. But you watch UCLA and guys were standing up all over the place, and they had so much success with that. And they were good against the run, even when they had a lot of guys standing up. So that to me immediately jumps out. I just wonder from a personnel perspective, UCLA, they had some dudes on that defensive line. I think right now USC has one known surefire dude in Bear Alexander. And then it's sort of, you have Jamil Muhammad had a nice season last year. You have some younger guys who have a lot of potential, but UCLA had a lot of proven defensive linemen between Liatu Latu and then the Murphy twins. Those guys were just beasts. And Jay Toya, even though PFF didn't really grade him too highly, which I was surprised to see when I was doing some research on him, I felt like he made a real difference in the middle there. So I just wonder if USC has the bodies right now to do exactly what UCLA did. And I'm sure if we had Danton Lynn on the show, he'd say, we're not going to do exactly what UCLA did because the team is different. But from what UCLA did, from a defensive lineman perspective, that really appeals to me. And that looked awesome. And they had so much success with that front. I wonder if USC has the personnel for that. And if they don't, what Danton Lynn is going to do to try to get similar results. I think the strength of the team is in their secondary. I've been on the record saying that a lot. I think at the safety spot, USC's really strong. At cornerback, even though they had some transfers, I like what they have there. If Jacoby Covington stays healthy, I think they could really, really be good in the secondary. And at linebacker, even though it was so bad last year, I like what they have there as well, especially with Eric Gentry coming back. So where I'm nervous is the middle of that defense on the interior, but I do think they do have some potential. I don't think it's going to be as good as UCLA's was last year, but I think it could be good enough to win a lot of games for sure.
Yeah, I mean, as long as we don't have that, the ball's about to be snapped and everybody's pointing all over the place.
Yeah,
nobody knows what's going on. That's the thing that we couldn't even stand. And with the Trojans last year under Alex Grinch, even though Alex Grinch wasn't the entire problem, but he was a big part of it. A lot of stuff has come out, and I'm going to switch over to NFL draft real quick, and then I'll let you go because I know I'm thank you for your time. Caleb Williams, you covered this man. You have seen you've seen every play last year, everything like that. Can you let people like what would be like the thing that you'd want people to know about Caleb Williams as far as or as far as him going to the NFL? Because there's a lot that comes out. Half of it is just not factually it's not factual information, but from your vantage point, you covered them all the time. What would be the thing that you took away from being around that USC program and seeing how it changed under Caleb Williams?
I just start with he's beloved by his teammates and by his coaches, and I've been asked this a lot, and I think the only real big negative in a draft prospect, something that bothers me, would be if a player has a reputation for not working hard. And Caleb Williams works really, really hard.
Yeah.
Some people didn't like the crying after the Washington game, and there are other little things, but to me, nothing even comes close to eliminating him from being the number one overall pick. Just when you look at what the NFL is like now, you need to be mobile, you need to be smart, you need to have a big arm, and I think he has all of those traits. Are there some things that need to be refined with him? Sure, he fumbled the ball a lot last year, but that was because he felt like he had to take matters into his own hands and be Superman. the NFL level, I think that'll be coached out of him, which
Yeah.
will be huge. So I think for all his faults that people want to talk about, I just think his strengths and how he plays so greatly outweighs all of those. And if I was the Bears, I think it's a home run taking him #1 overall. Now, is it a guarantee that he's going to be great and go on to make the Hall of Fame? I don't think anyone is going to say that right now, or at least I'm not, because I don't want that sound clip on my record forever. We see people make some crazy predictions, but I just think he has so much going for him. I would be really surprised if he didn't have a very long NFL career, because he's so talented. He does a lot of things the right way, and for all of his faults that people keep bringing up, I just think like you got to look under a microscope to see issues with this guy. He really doesn't have that many things wrong with him, and everyone's trying to poke holes in him. I thought he did really well at the combine speaking. I'm a big fan of his. I think he's going to have a lot of success. I'd try to tell it how it is too. So if I had any I'd say I honestly don't. I think he has done everything right, and he deserves to be the #1 pick.
Yeah, I think so too as well. If you had to choose of the rest of the guys going into the draft, Taj Washington, Christian Wallace, Solomon Byrd, Brendan Rice, Kalen Bullock. I know it's hard. The running back as well. I know it's hard to because you don't know where they're gonna go. But who would you think would be who's the second most excited prospect for the NFL for out of this USC class?
I think it's Marshawn Lloyd. He just needs to hang on to the ball. The only with him are the fumbles. And that's, if you fumble a lot, that's a one-way ticket to the bench, of course. So he I'm sure knows he needs to work on that, but he did really well at the combine. I just think how he runs, he's so physical. He looked like an NFL back at USC last year. He was in the passing game a little bit. He's not a true catch it out of the backfield guy. I think that can be developed, but if you need a tough yard, I can't think of too many other running backs who I'd rather get the ball to than him. I think he goes in the 3rd round, and I think a team will be really, really happy with him. I feel bad for running backs. As you know, they just, they get used and abused. So I think he's going to be the guy who will play a lot as a rookie wherever he goes, get a ton of touches. And as long as he holds on to the ball, I think he will have a really promising pro career for however long that lasts, because with running backs, they can be short. I think he could have 3 to 4 really good years in the NFL. Then we'll see what happens when it comes time for his second contract.
Yeah, it's funny. Yeah, a friend of mine texted me who's he's a Longhorn fan. And he was just like, "What did he average per carry?" And I was like, "Yeah, it's pretty good." I was like, "Well, how come you guys didn't run him more? Why you got to ask coach that?" I don't know. Sometimes they could have ran the football a little bit more. All right, Connor, you can catch Connor's all this stuff on USC football. I keep saying USA, USC football. USCfootball.com, Peristyle Podcast, Tunnel Vision, all that stuff like that. And then check him out there. And also you guys have the thing, what's that? The War Room and all the stuff like that and everything like that too as well. So people can sign up for that as well too. So all right, thank you for joining us, man. Take care. All right.
Dwayne, thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Take your time. Have a good day.